Right. Well, I am really excited today because Dr. Gola is meeting with us today to tell us a little bit more about addiction and the brain science behind it, and especially when it comes to pornography. And he's going to throw some light on the recent data. So, this is a great opportunity to get an update on the latest science, the latest neuroscience of addiction. But just a little bit, let me welcome Dr. Gola. Thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen, for having me. And it's a pleasure to share this knowledge with you and with everyone who will watch it.
Yeah. Well, our Defend Young Minds community is they're very interested in, raising their children to be free from pornography and from other, internet addictions, and to be free from other digital dangers. But before we get going, I need to properly introduce you and tell people what what your background is. So Dr. Gola, you are a psychotherapist and a neuroscientist. So right away, we know you're an overachiever. You help individuals with addiction through your clinical work, and you do cutting edge research. And you're also associate professor of the Polish Academy of Sciences, which is pretty impressive, and at the University of California in San Diego. And don't we love San Diego?
Yeah, that.
So Dr. Gola, for our audience, is a leader in the field of studies on neuroscience of problematic pornography use. And sometimes that's called PPU, problematic pornography use. And the author and co-author of over 120 research publications. So that in and of itself shows you what an expert he is. But in his free time, he also enjoys surfing, which of course is great in California, and meeting new people while traveling the world, which I love to do too. And as soon as this COVID thing is a little bit more abated, I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that. But thank you again so much for being here with us. So let's start with some background before we get into the actual science. So what initiated your interest in how viewing pornography affects the brain?
So first of all, I always wanted to do something for people and help as many people as possible. So back in Poland, I started my education in clinical psychology. At some point, I got a clinical psychology doctorate, and I started working with patients. And while working with patients, I was working mostly with people with different types of addictions. And there were also people who were seeking treatment because of pornography addiction, because of problematic pornography use, sometimes other sexual behaviors. Yeah. And it was back in 2010, 2009. And I realized that actually we have very little knowledge about it. And there is no good research, no systematic data on how does it change your functioning, how does it influence your brain, how to help those people. And it was not classified in any classification of disorders, so it wasn't an official problem. Yeah? And like one of very striking thing was that, during the 7 years of my education to become a clinical psychologist, there was not even a single hour in the education program about compulsive sexual behaviors, about pornography use, nothing. Yeah.
So you got started because you saw this problem. Mm-hmm. There are all these people that had this problem, and yet in your course of study, in your, for your degree, there wasn't even a class that was
not even
teaching you how to deal with this, teaching you how to help people. So you just went, figured it out, started learning, and started a lot of research. That is so wonderful.
Yeah,
That
and
is such a gift, really.
now thanks to this research, we have much better understanding of this problem. For me personally, as a clinician, I'm back to clinical work. It's easier to help people, and it's much
Mhm.
more effective now. But what is even more important is that we increase the awareness of this problem through this knowledge, and every serious training program for clinicians now has classes or even like very extensive trainings about compulsive sexual behavior disorders, behavioral addictions, and also pornography.
That's wonderful. That's such a huge step ahead. And what we're trying to do at Defend Young Minds, and me as an author of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, is really try to get tools in the hands of parents so that they know how to initiate these conversations with their kids, and so they can avoid it. Because I have talked with so many people, and I would say most of them are men, but there are many women out there as well that are caught in a pornography addiction. And they have come up to me and said, I wish my parents had had something, you know, that they could use to help, you know, to talk to me about this. In other words, I wish I would have been warned as a younger child before I got into porn. And so I can see that, you know, our missions are definitely, you know, complementary.
Yeah,
Well,
I want to say that what you are doing is very important, and I appreciate this work, and especially, you know, this idea to deliver knowledge and those basic skills through such interesting books. Yeah, and it's much easier to prevent than treat. Yeah, so this prevention is very, very important.
well, speaking about, you know, our brains and the addiction, we know our brains are malleable. We know that, you know, they're plastic in a sense that they change. Every experience we have changes our brain a little bit,
Mhm.
but in small ways. But how does using porn change the brain in bigger ways, in more serious ways that begin to negatively impact a person's life?
Yes, so this is a great question, and this was the main focus of our research during the first years. And first of all, we need to understand what's addiction, yeah, and this is not obvious even among scientists, yeah. So one of the feature which is common across different addictions, both related to the substances and behaviors, like gambling, gaming, or in this case, we are talking about the problematic pornography use, is that you receive like there is a huge disproportion between the effort you need to put to receive the reward. Yeah, so the reward is much higher than the effort you are putting in. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about the regular sexual behaviors. You know, the teenager, for example, if wants to, if you know the boy or girl wants to have first sexual encounter, yeah, it takes some time, a lot of effort. You need to look good. You need to present yourself. You need to be talkative. You need to meet someone, build a relation, and then at some point you have sex. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge effort, and there is a reward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we are talking about the pornography, you don't need to look, you don't need to present yourself. You just do a few clicks on your cell phone
Mm-hmm.
or on the keyboard, and boom, you have like a lot of sexual stimuli. And also you can have orgasms, and you can have even multiple orgasms during the day. When you're addicted, it happens very often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this reward is completely disproportional to the effort. Yeah, and
Right.
um, and then the addictive power is huge. And what happens when we receive something which provides us pleasure, which satisfies our needs, which is rewarding? Then the dopaminergic circuits in the brain, especially ventral striatum or orbitofrontal cortex, they are learning all the cues which can predict this reward. So we start learning very fast that, okay, if A happens, then I can expect this type of reward. If I behave well, then I will get some extra pocket money. Yeah? If I will perform well at work, I will get a raise of salary. Yeah? Okay, but there is also very simple learning that, oh, when I'm home alone, I can watch porn. Yeah? When I have access to this tablet or this phone, it's not filtered. I can watch porn. Yeah. And if I've been watching pornography in certain circumstances very often, or if I've been watching pornography as a response to specific emotions, whenever I feel sad, depressed, angry, lonely, frustrated, whatever, then the brain starts recognizing those circumstances or those emotional states as cues. And then what happens? Then dopamine is released, and dopamine is playing a very important role in motivation.
Right.
So it's released in the response to cues of different things. So when we see grandpa, we know that, oh, if we will be like nice, then we can get this pocket money. Yeah.
Your grandpa, huh?
Yeah. So we are motivated to behave nice. Yeah.
Yes.
But when this mechanism is driven by other cues which are associated with pornography watching, then we start doing everything to really have access to this pornography. We are very motivated to have this access and to start watching it, to find something exciting, and then to masturbate and have an orgasm. Yeah? And this is the ultimate reward. Yeah? And over the time, when this behavior is repeated thousands of times, then this reactivity for cue becomes very automatic and very strong. And at some point, it's so strong that it's not anymore perceived as motivation. It's something what resembles craving. Yeah. So it's very strong need to do it, and it's very hard to inhibit it. Yeah. We have capacity to inhibit our cravings. Yeah. And frontal cortex is playing very important role in doing this. And that's why, whenever we decide to go on diet, we can resist eating sweets and so on and reach our long-term goals. When we are going to school, we learn how to do first our homework, then play, and we can resist the temptation to play before doing homework and so on. And, we don't watch pornography in random places, in random time. But when prefrontal cortex cannot inhibit ventral striatum, those dopaminergic pathways, then we can't control our behaviors anymore. And then
so that's the real like marker of an addiction, when that thinking brain is bypassed. The thinking brain no longer can control the drive and the craving to do something to get porn.
And it happens at least in two scenarios. One scenario is that through multiple repetitions of the same behavior, watching pornography in the specific contexts, in response to specific emotions and so on, we develop very strong sensitization for the cues, and then ventral striatum becomes over responsive. So it's reacting immediately and very strong to the certain cues. It's like a vampire, yeah, that we have this little cue. It's like a first drop of the blood, and we cannot stop there. We just need to suck in and, bite and suck out all the blood. So we need to go all this way to watch the porn, to masturbate, to reach the orgasm, yeah.
Right.
There's no way to stop somewhere in between. And the second scenario is when something happens to the prefrontal cortex, yeah. And we study adults, yeah, and we see that adult people who develop this problematic pornography use pattern, and they are seeking treatment because of that, they have less gray matter, less neuronal cells in the same parts of the prefrontal cortex, yeah, as people who are addicted to alcohol or gambling. Yeah? And we don't know if this is something pre-existing. My guess is yes, that this is a pre-existing thing which creates some vulnerability to develop any type of addiction. Or is it an effect of pornography use? Probably not. The effect of pornography use is the sensitization in the ventral striatum.
Okay.
When we come to kids, we know that the prefrontal cortex is developing until the 18th, 19th year of life in case of women, girls, and in case of boys, men, it takes a little bit longer, until 20, 21. So sooner someone is exposed to potentially addictive things, let's say like pornography, then the chance to not be able to inhibit that and develop problematic pattern is higher.
So obviously, the younger they start, the more it can impact their brain. Is what the more it can become.
Yes. We still don't have like clear data proving that, but we know for sure that if when we are younger, we have less ability to control our behaviors. Yeah,
right.
That's why we don't sell alcohol to people who are under 18 years old in Europe or 21 in US. Yeah, and that's why officially pornography is allowed from 18 years old, not 12 or 13 or 10. And by the way, we just published a study where we were tracking behavior of 300,000 people in the internet. And among them, there was also kids starting from 7 years old. And guess how many kids, what's the percentage of kids in the group from 7 to 10 watching pornography at least once a month?
I'm going to let you, because that was my next question. What's your data on how kids are watching porn? What's your latest data? So tell me about this.
25% boys and girls. Yeah. So every fourth kid was watching porn at least once a month. Yeah.
Between
7 and 10.
Ages 7 and 10. Yeah. 7 and 10. Yeah. Well, they have access to it. I mean, like you said before, we don't let them go out and buy cigarettes. We don't let an 8-year-old go out and buy alcohol at the corner store. But, we give them access to a phone or a tablet, and, they're away they go and they figure it out. I was just talking with, I was just talking with someone who told me about a mom who, her husband he was this IT expert. He felt like he had locked down the phone, but she just had a feeling to check her 15-year-old's phone. And her husband did. And it was basically horrific. The things that, and it had just been a week and a half. He'd started a new job, and a friend had clued him in. Well, this is, we hear these stories constantly. And you think, and this friend kind of said, oh, I know how to get around that control. Here's how to do it, whatever. And the kids, they teach each other. And in that week and a half, his countenance had come down, and he looked just dark, and looked like he was just pulling in. So it affected him. And I've heard this before. For example, early on when I was first writing Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, I learned about an 8-year-old girl. Her mother had given her an internet-enabled device, and she had also talked to her about started to talk to her about that. Well, this little girl knew, she saw how her parents, would go to Siri or Google or whatever to get answers. So she typed in sex and started looking at pornography. And over the months, she just became more and more withdrawn, depressed. She'd been this happy little girl, and it just really affected her personality until they found out. And thankfully they did. and they took her to counseling, and she was able to get help with that. But children have such access, they're curious, and they don't know unless you tell them. They have no idea this could have few, and besides, kids are very now oriented. If you tell them this could affect your ability to find someone to marry in 15 years, or this could affect this, or they're much more focused on their life right now. But at least they need a heads up. They need to be able to understand that they could be negatively impacted in a big way by looking at pornography.
Yes, and of course, it doesn't impact everyone, the same way.
Right.
This is also important to know, to not panic, and we know that about 11% of boys, they say that they had this experience of losing control over pornography use. And we know that 90 few percent were using, the age of 15 or 16. So this is also like doesn't impact everyone in the same way, but
Right.
that it may impact some people really
Right.
heavily. It's there, and
just like with alcohol, there are some people that can drink in moderation, and there are other people that it absolutely destroys their lives. And I've got both people in my family, and it's sad because the thing is this: you don't know exactly, but you can tell us, explain to us who you feel or who you think is the most vulnerable for developing an addiction to pornography. Can parents, and we can talk about addiction, and addiction is really important to avoid. There are other problems with pornography other than addiction, but and so that's why it's so important to talk to kids about it. It's not just addiction. There are many other issues. It's the way women are treated. It's the attitudes that it engenders. It's the negative scripts and all that. But we're going to get back to addiction. So who's the most vulnerable when it comes to, and can a parent, if they have 3 or 4 kids, could they kind of pick out who might be the one that they really need to worry about?
Okay, so first of all, we have few different types of vulnerability for addiction. One is related to biology and genetics. And here there is one very simple diagnostic question. Is there any history of any type of addiction in the family? If one or both parents or grandparents were addicted to something, and then we can assume with high probability that there is also this vulnerability among kids. Then the second thing is psychological vulnerability. And here we know from studies that people who develop problematic pornography use, they usually have less skills in emotional regulation. So they are either more depressed, or they have difficulty with regulate their emotions, cope with their emotions themselves. They need some support, and this is something what we can teach. The good relationships between parents and kids, the relationships based on trust, where the kid can talk about everything, and doesn't have to worry about the reaction of the parents, if they will be upset, angry, or just disappointed. It helps a lot. Such relationships between siblings, older and younger siblings, helps a lot. So everything what helps to deal with life, with difficulties of life, with emotions, where there is permission to express all types of emotions, even those difficult emotions, or especially those difficult, helps a lot. So if we don't have such a base, then the vulnerability for either problematic gaming or problematic pornography use is pretty high, because it's much more accessible than substances.
Well, we have a guide, and we talk about this a lot on Defend Young Minds about emotional resilience and teaching children to recognize their emotions and to develop healthy ways to get their emotional needs met. Because otherwise, porn is actually, you look in a child's life, porn is one of the easiest things and the one that's such a super stimulus, right? That can give them that distraction that if they come home and they've been bullied, or if they're lonely, or if they're angry, or whatever, go to porn. That is I did a whole study on why kids hire porn. And obviously one of them was to learn about sex because their parents hadn't taught them about sex. But another big one was, again, emotional needs. They need to be, they don't want, nobody wants to feel bad. Nobody wants to feel bad. We will almost do anything to get away from feeling anxious, feeling depressed. You know, what can we do? And I think that if we can teach kids healthy ways to do that, they have that tool in their toolkit, and they're much less, much less vulnerable.
And this is a very important tool. Yeah. And, like, according to the studies we were doing and other groups were doing, in this groups of 7 to 10 years old, most of the kids, even when they go to porn, they go because of the curiosity. Yeah. But when you look at the 14, 15 years old, you already have a group of about 10% of boys who watch pornography every day. Yeah. And you don't watch every day because of curiosity. Yeah? You watch every day because you're already running away from some difficulties in your life. You just found a great way to log out from the life for a moment, or for even a few hours. Yeah, because pornography always provides excitement, novelty, and great distraction. There's always something new to find, and at the end, when you masturbate with it, it's also a pleasure. Yeah.
And so those, the two combined are just in the brain. It's just a huge response. And like you said, the brain gets sensitized to all of those situations. I find myself, I have a little bit of a sweet tooth. And when I get upset, if I'm not being careful, I'm in front of the refrigerator, look, with the doors open before I even know it. Like, how did I get here? And so we all have, our brains have worked out some of these go-to things that are difficult to change. I have to work really hard at changing that, and I do. But that's definitely something that kids need to learn, is to get that. And we actually have a guide, a special guide on teaching emotional resilience to your children on defendyoungminds.com. So I'd invite all of you to go and check that out. It's some simple, easy ways, actionable things that you can do to start teaching your children emotional resilience. We have a lot of articles about it as well on our blog. So, okay, well, this has been awesome. You've talked about, how pornography can sensitize the brain. And I think about it like, if you're an alcoholic and you're driving down the road and you see a billboard that is a big picture of, your favorite alcohol, you are going to get that craving to go get a drink, to drink. Whereas someone like me who doesn't drink at all, I don't even, doesn't register on my brain. It's not lighting up my little reward center. And so I just drive on by. Now, if I see a big thing with donuts or cookies or cherry pie and ice cream, maybe my brain is like, whoa, wouldn't I like that?
There's even, it's even more complicated, because in case of problematic pornography use, we see that the parts of the brain, orbitofrontal cortex, which is responsible to learning variety of pleasures, yeah, and cues of different pleasures. Among those people who developed this pattern of problematic pornography use is very highly occupied by cues which are predictive for pornography watching, yeah, and there is like this enhancement to learn other cues related to porn, but not related to other pleasures. Yeah. So
Ah,
it's more difficult to
it's like a
derive pleasure
super,
from other things.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
At some point, you know, you are just like um, in
All I want is porn.
tunnel. Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's not conducive for a productive, successful, happy life.
No,
Uh,
there's a lot of
not,
suffering, a lot of
it's, yeah,
difficulties with maintaining
yeah,
jobs, relationships, and a lot of also depression, because you know if you have a
yeah,
constant experience of losing control over your life, over your behavior, it's very depressing. It's very sad, and there's a lot of suffering.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And, I think that I honestly don't judge those people. I have a lot of compassion for anyone that is pulled into any kind of addiction. Um, my dad was an alcoholic, and it did it. He was a brilliant attorney, and it
Mhm.
just took him down.
Yeah.
And my mother also drank, but she could stop. Like, she just stopped one day.
Mhm.
So even though she used for quite a while,
Mhm.
she didn't get addicted in the sense of, because she could just stop. She did. She stopped one day, and that was it. And so you're right. There are definitely differences in people.
Mhm.
And as we spoke about it before, there's other reasons to, definitely addiction is a problem, and no parent wants, you know, their child to be addicted to anything, video games or social media, right? Or any kind of substance abuse or pornography, because again, pornography seems to be one of the easiest and most accessible drugs, that we have, because, if you had a meth problem and you could get meth 24/7 for free delivered through your cell phone, through your smartphone, in your bedroom, you might have a really big meth problem, a much bigger meth problem. So, it's definitely the drug that is most accessible to children and most harmful to their their sexual scripts as well. And so
And this is
just
a
wrap.
whole other topic, you know, like how
It is.
pornography watching is shaping the sexual preferences, behaviors, and how does it happen on the mass scale. Yeah, but this is a topic for another hour.
It
This-
is another top. That's true.
yeah,
And
but
it is pretty, it is
we
pretty
know,
frightening.
but we know from research that kids who are watching more pornography, and they feel, paradoxically, they feel less confident when it comes to the first sexual encounters.
Mhm.
uh, and they have much more anxiety around their performance during the sex. It's not, you know, this pure excitement and fun. There is much more self-judging and comparing
Mhm.
stuff to what they see
Right.
on. Yeah.
Well, yeah, when I've spoken to teens,
Mhm.
I have asked, and there'll be boys and girls, and I'd say, well, if you're a boy,
Mhm.
do you want, well, I asked them all, do you really want porn to be the third partner in your marriage? And, do you want to be comparing yourself with the people in porn when you're, having sex with your spouse? And you know, when they hear that, they're like, no, I don't. But that's what happens. And I think that's partly why it brings their confidence down. Well, what would be your advice to parents on how they can addiction proof? Just wrap it up. How can
Mhm.
parents addiction proof their kids?
Okay, so there is no golden bullet and there is no quick fix here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, to do the serious addiction proofing, yeah, you need to develop a good relationship with your kids. Yeah, and this is something what takes time. So it's like gardening. You cannot just plant things and forget it. You need to take care of it every day or on the regular basis. And good relationship means that there's a lot of trust,
Mhm.
not judgmental relationship. There is a lot of openness to understand the differences in seeing world, experiencing different things or the same things in a different way. And such a good relationship, it's the best proof because it helps to develop this emotional coping skills and good skills to cope with stress, with other difficulties in life. And there is nothing better. And also this openness about conversation around sexuality, sexual experiences, needs, and so on. It's also very important. And this is something that we already see in the research. So it doesn't matter if someone is growing up in a conservative family or a very liberal family. We were doing studies in Israel among very Orthodox Jews, for example, very liberal people. Yeah, and what really matters is that you can talk with your parent about your sexuality. That the parent is not afraid to talk. And what we see, it's important that this relationship usually works the best between boys and fathers and girls and mothers. Yeah.
Okay.
Same-sex parent. And then, it's difficult because a lot of people in our generations, either yours or mine, we were not taught how to talk about sex without taboo, without shame, without being embarrassed. Yeah. So it also
Mhm.
takes a lot of self-education for parents.
Yeah. And so what would you say if parents are feeling, well, let me ask you this. Let's say there's a father and he has a son and he wants to warn him about, because maybe this father has an addiction to pornography and he wants to warn his son and keep him away from pornography, but he feels like he's a hypocrite if he says something, or, what would you say to that parent? And
Right.
also, what would you say to a mother who knows that her husband is not going to talk to their son? And even though it's not ideal, should she just go ahead and do it anyway?
To find first professional help, so it's not an issue anymore. And then,
Ah,
so this it's much easier to be open and to talk and even share the experience. Yeah.
so take some steps to try to get out of your
Yeah.
problem. And
Mhm.
as you're taking those steps, that's going to help you feel more confident to talk to your children.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Gola, where can people find more of your stuff? How can they connect with you
Um,
if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
the easiest way is through my website. It's Dr. Gola, DRGOLA, dot online. And you can just type it in your browser, and there is a whole list of publications. If you want to, schedule an appointment and talk, then it's also possible for the website.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gola. I know there's a lot of different, we don't really talk a lot about treatment in Defend Young Minds because there's such a huge range of different ideas about that. Um, but we're always grateful to talk with people that have done research. And, we're just so grateful that you're sharing your knowledge with us and the Defend Young Minds community. And I just invite, any of you who have watched this interview to share it with a friend, and also to share the many resources that we have at Defend Young Minds, which includes our guides. We have a guide for called see, my kid saw porn, now what?
Yeah,
My
that's a
kid saw porn, now what? And
American deal.
yeah. So we
Yeah.
have that guide. We have a guide about how to start talking to your kids about pornography. Obviously, we have the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures books. We also have a new Good Pictures, Bad Pictures guide for professionals, which is great for therapists and educators. It has 15 interventions, so these fun activities to do with kids to really help in treatment and to really help them internalize all the concepts that we teach in Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, so that they can not just read the book or, but they can really internalize the book. So anyway, thank you so
I'm very
much.
impressed by your work and how many good resources you give to the people. And I also want to say that to everyone who's watching us, that watching our interview, I'm really happy that you took this step to educate yourself about pornography to protect your kids, and this is very important.
Yeah, thank you. All
Thank you,
righty.
Christine.
Well, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll come back another time and talk about some of the topics that we didn't get to. But thank you again so very much, Dr. Gola. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.